After the physical assault, and having to go to court, and I decided that I would drop the emergency protection order and not continue with the DVO because the communication had stopped. I didn't process and I wasn't fully aware of his history. So when I told the judge that I didn't want to continue with the DVO, the judge is like, "Are you sure?" Because this gentleman has had, say 3 other instances or whatever of domestic violence. But to my knowledge, none of them were physical. But I wasn't thinking of that to where I should have allowed it to continue. And that way, if he did, then it would be a violation. But, I think in my mindset, I was trying to still protect him, honestly. I think the thing about love is that you continue to care for that person regardless of what happens. And with me being a child of God, I'm forgiving. Not that I was going to let him come back, but you live your life and I live mine, and leave me alone. I was looking online and I found his court docket from his trial with another victim. And I couldn't believe what I read. And at that time I knew that I was in trouble. And I was lucky that he hadn't killed me the 2 other times with the gun. Because when I look back at it, I was in a deep, dark dungeon with the devil himself. I knew that I had to be careful. I had to watch every step I took. I chose at that point to not venture anywhere other than, my normal places. I let everyone be aware to where my job had to have security out there. My church had security, and whenever I would go to Swahili, if I was in there, they wouldn't let him in. If he was in there, they'd tell me not to come in. So I felt safe in that aspect. I talked to people that I would go to a happy hour at the Swahili Oaks Lodge, and I said, "Hey, this is what happened." But he actually went around, advertising what happened because it was his birthday. It was his birthday, and I ruined his birthday by sending him to jail on his birthday. Because if I was truly listening to what the judge was telling me, I'd have slapped that DVO on there real quick. But again, because of my uneducated thoughts of domestic violence or finding peace or managing someone with different behaviors that are abusive, I just thought that I would be okay. So there was one night I was out and they said, "No, Wendell, you can't come in. April's in there." And at one point in time, he came inside. And I can't recall how I really felt. My memory goes in and out, at this point. He could get to me pretty fast, but I just didn't feel as though he was going to do anything because he had too calm of a spirit that night. He was sitting at the table with some good friends of mine. But I'm standing there talking to a friend of mine and her dad. And next thing I know, Wendell's behind me. And Wendell grabs my wrist and turns me around and he says, "We need to talk." And I'm like, "We don't need to talk about anything. I'm done. It's over. I'm never going back. We have no conversation here." And I recall him just tussling, with my arm and me trying to get him off my arm because he had a pretty strong grip. And next thing I knew, he pulled his shirt up. Wendell put his shirt up. And when he pulled his shirt up, I saw the butt of a gun. And this is where I blacked out. However, we were standing right under a camera, so everything is on video. It's very visible. And through the trial, I was able to see that his first plan of shooting was to shoot me in the face because he pointed the gun at my face. And luckily, I swatted the gun off, and it went off in the wall behind my head. So as I did that, I tried to take a step to run out. And I don't know why I was going to run out the door, but I just, I just wanted to take flight and flee. And I tripped in one step. And in that one step, I fell to the ground. And he stood over me and released 5 bullets that entered my body. He stepped over and he ran out and he left. And I laid there and bled out, pretty much. I recall coming to at that point, and I couldn't really see. Everything was blurry. All I could see was something like white, like there was a white sheet over me. If people say that I was alert, and I was trying to get up, and I was screaming and just being very reactive to everything that happened, but I never heard a bullet. I never saw a bullet. I never saw sparks. I never saw anything. I never felt anything. I just laid there. Next thing, I heard sirens, and I said, I can't breathe, and then I faded out. And next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital the next morning. I don't recall anything else that happened. I understand that I flatlined 3 times. They had to give me blood transfusions quite a bit because I had lost so much blood. And I had 2 chest tubes. I had broken ribs, a collapsed lung. I didn't learn that I was paralyzed at the hospital. So at the hospital, I was highly medicated as far as pain is concerned. I never saw the dressings. I recall trying to get to my phone. I'm like, somebody give me my phone when I'm in the hospital, and I need to check my messages. I need to text. I need to, figure out my bills, and I need to. Oh my God, what about work? I was thinking about the wrong things, obviously. I found out when I was paralyzed when I was transported to Cardinal Hill. And I didn't go to Cardinal Hill till probably about 12 days later after the shooting. And because Wendell was actually on the run for 9 days. But when I went to Cardinal Hill, my first visit with the doctor was, okay, we got to, keep you, we have to keep you protected. So immediately my doctor said, look, my therapists for spinal cord injuries are downstairs. And so she moved me to the spinal cord unit. And the first day that she came to visit me in there was when I heard the word paralysis. So when you hear someone say, April, your paralysis is here down. So I'm like, okay. I try not to be afraid because remember, my faith is unbelievable at this point. And I figured, okay, well, I can do this. I can get around in a chair. I never cried. I never asked why, this happened or, why do I have to utilize this chair? I just wanted to thrive in whatever situation I was in. I never did see myself as a victim. I always saw myself as a survivor because victims don't always make it. And I felt as though anything that I felt that I could do, I thought I could do, I knew I could do, and nobody could tell me different. So, I didn't have a problem being paralyzed. I had a problem trying to figure out life. So my interaction with legal authorities such as the police department, the sheriff's department, and different advocates began when I was at UK. And when I was at UK, something that the police department did, was a big concern on my safety, and because he was still out on the run. But the police department provided a K-9 unit at my door at all times. And they rotated their shifts, and so it was a K-9 and an officer that stood there at all times. They gave me an alias and a password, so there was only very few people that could actually come and see me while I was there. Now, while I transitioned over to Cardinal Hill, that's when the Sheriff's Department became involved, and they sent a safety planning deputy over, and I felt safe. And I think my mind was in a better place to be open to what was actually being said. This was a very confusing time at this point in my life, because there were so many different moving parts, and then so many parts that weren't moving. So trying to find a balance to maintain my sanity was tough. Like I said, the safety planning deputy came over and assisted me with filling out a protection order, an emergency protection order. So I started this process again on a higher level. And I think that was a great resource on how they reached out to me and came to me, instead of me trying to come to them, because I would have had to wait it until I was released. So that really worked out, and it didn't take much time. It was just a process of doing the paperwork. So the paperwork was submitted, and then 15 days later, of course, I'm still at Cardinal Hill, and I couldn't be released to go to court. I wasn't in any position to go to court. However, I wanted this court date to happen. So another thing that the courts did for me is they actually allowed me to do the court hearing over the phone, to where one of the advocates came to Cardinal Hill, and they sat there with me. Instead of them being in the courtroom, they were with me at the hospital while I did what I had to do in court. The advocate's presence did for me was, it gave me an overwhelming peace that they're here to help me. This gave me a personal relationship with an advocate. This one, she came and sat with me in the hospital. And I think that meant more to me than anything, because I knew at that point they really cared, and they're just there to help. Advocates can actually make a huge difference in a survivor's experience or their journey through domestic violence and the court system. And I think the biggest way to make the most valuable effort is, one, to listen, to take your time listening. Give that person the opportunity to say what they're feeling or what's on their mind, and not allow them to feel any type of rush or urgency or speed in your voice or in how you're speaking. You have to really slow it down so that they don't feel as though you're rushing to get to the next person. Because it's not about the next person, it's not about the person before, it's about that individual that has survived domestic violence.